Good evening. The Iraq War is hardly registering as an issue in the upcoming midterm election. But listen to this. The figure we usually hear for deaths in the Iraq War is the number of American deaths, about 4,200 according to the Pentagon. But since last Friday, journalists have been digesting the astonishing leak of nearly 400,000 Pentagon records on the Iraq War. The headline is that the Pentagon documented more than 109,000 total deaths in the war, about 15,000 more than have been acknowledged publicly before. Some person or people inside the military made all this available to the group WikiLeaks, which released it to major news organizations. This map was made by the Guardian newspaper of the UK using a Google tool known as a fusion table to show us where those deaths occurred relative to central Baghdad. So this will be our first image tonight. The database records 109,032 deaths in total for the period. The database records the following death counts: 66,081 civilians, 23,984 insurgents, and 15,196 Iraqi security forces. In other words, nearly 2 out of 3 deaths were civilian deaths. The worst place for deaths was Baghdad, 45,497. Followed by MND North, which is the region that goes from Baghdad up to Kurdistan, where another 34,210 people died. That's at the top of your screen. The quietest place was the Northeast, with only 328 deaths in the upper right. Maybe a loved one died on a bridge or in a river. Thanks to WikiLeaks, now we know. We should add here that the independent group, Iraq Body Count, is still looking over this new data, but predicts it will boost their count of the dead, which covers more time, to 150,000. What else is on tonight's program? Well, a very different kind of census. We'll hear about Project Noah. It's photo crowdsourcing, where amateur snapshots of bugs and birds help scientists see the World Wide Web of nature. And legal eagle Dahlia Lithwick from Slate will be here to explain a troubling trend affecting our electoral process. And speaking of that, the midterm elections are less than a week off. You've heard a lot about the key races from Delaware to California, but there's a hot fight right here that mirrors the battles nationwide for control of the House. It's the race to represent the 13th Congressional District in Staten Island and part of Brooklyn. The incumbent is Michael McMahon, the first Democrat in decades to represent the 13th. He rode in on the Obama wave. But now that wave has become a treacherous undertow, and a Republican Tea Party-backed ex-FBI man named Michael Grimm hopes to unseat McMahon. They debated last night at Wagner College. McMahon speaks first.
Our number one problem right now in this country is jobs, jobs, jobs. And I know I'm going to be under attack tonight for the recovery bill, the so-called stimulus bill. But when you could look around Staten Island, you see that we're rebuilding the Staten Island Expressway. We are rebuilding the Staten Island Ferry. We're building a new terminal on the North Shore. We're fixing the subways in Brooklyn. These are good jobs where people are working. We fix park and rides. We've got scientists working at the Institute of Basic Research to try to solve the problems.
Here's the problem with all those wonderful projects we're talking about. The money it was borrowed. We borrowed that money. It didn't come from a budget. This was the most fiscally irresponsible Congress in our history. They didn't even propose a budget. And the jobs, we spent almost $1 trillion. If anyone in here thinks that the 400+ jobs that came to Staten Island was worth $1 trillion, speak to your accountant about that.
Refreshingly, that interchange was on an actual issue. But lately, this race has been a lot of boasting, bashing, and dueling videos. Here to help us understand the race between the two mics and view some of these videos is Tom Wrobleski, the political editor of the Staten Island Advance. Thank you so much for coming in.
Thanks for thinking of me.
Give, for our listeners who may not know, the thumbnail sketch of who each of these candidates are.
We have the incumbent Michael McMahon, who was a city councilman for a number of years. Got the seat in 2008 after Vito Fossella, his DWI and love child scandal. DWI scandal and a personal scandal as well.
Basically have two families.
Found to have two families. And he's trying to hold on in the face of what people are predicting is going to be a Republican Party retake of the House, trying to keep a little bit of distance between himself and Obama, President Obama, and between Nancy Pelosi, the House Speaker, especially on health care, which he voted against, which was the way the district wanted him to vote.
And you told me when we were off the air that maybe he didn't really ride in on the Obama wave, as I said. Maybe he really came in a unique situation in really a Republican district just because of the Vito Fossella scandal.
Well, there are still people today who will tell you that if Vito Fossella had stayed in the race with all the baggage out there on the table, he might have still won. An elected Democrat like Mike McMahon does not get into the race, and national Democrats may not get involved in that race. It is such a heavy district. It voted for McCain over Obama in 2008. On the other side, we have a Republican conservative candidate, Michael Grimm, who's, as you mentioned, an ex-FBI agent, also a Marine Gulf War veteran. The first Gulf War, has strong Tea Party support, and is also backed by former borough president and Congressman Guy Molinari, who remains a powerful force in the borough politics.
He won a Republican primary with Sarah Palin backing against somebody who, you'd characterize as a more regular Republican?
Well, Michael Allegretti, who was his opponent, was the designee of the local party and of the Brooklyn party on that side of the district. So you would think that that person would have a leg up. Neither one was very particularly well known.
They're all named Michael, by the way.
It was the campaign of the three Mikes.
Be named Michael in order to run on Staten Island.
And on their staffs they have Michaels as well, so it gets kind of confusing. But he won very handily, Grimm. I mean, crushed Allegretti. It was like a 70-30 kind of race. And Allegretti lost districts in Brooklyn as well. So it set him up very well for the general election.
So those are nice, balanced biographical sketches of the two, but look what Mr. Grimm is saying about Mr. McMahon's biography in this spot. All right. Anything there you want to fact check?
Well, I think that the key thing when you look at an ad like that is the sort of dewy-eyed photo that they put of McMahon and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. I mean, this is common in races all over, trying to tie, McMahon and other, incumbents to, left-leaning, liberal, what they say, administration and her and Barack Obama. And also, this is somebody who's got a sterling background, Grimm, in law enforcement and in serving his country, versus somebody who is a career politician who raised your taxes. Not sure how much that is going to resonate with people, but I think that's the key thing is to kind of. McMahon, meanwhile, is trying to keep his distance by pointing out the differences he's had with
like
Obama.
Not voting on
very
for
much so,
healthcare
not
reform.
voting on health.
Was there anything else?
There are some there's about 75,000 people in the district who work on Wall Street or who work in areas that are affected by Wall Street. McMahon voted against the bonus taxing bill he was one of only 5 Democrats, and that was a priority of Pelosi's. There was also another priority of Pelosi's, which was a stock transaction tax that she wanted to put on. McMahon personally was on the House floor, I believe it was with Congressman Ackerman from Queens, with a letter saying we can't vote in favor of this. So he has tried to show that he is independent of them. He doesn't always, even though Grimm will tell you, well, he voted for stimulus, which is a driving issue, and he voted for cap and trade, even though that issue seems to have kind of gone by the wayside because it has not been taken up by the Senate.
But he cast his vote.
But he cast his vote.
The district is changing. We're going to put up a Social Explorer map of this. A different kind of map, a neighborhood map. Of this district, and we're going to take a look at it right now and see. Let's see, is this it? I think we're going. Okay, so I'm not sure that we can see the right image here. And there it is. There's the neighborhood map. Forgive us for the delay. Now, tell us what these different colors represent as you look at the borough of Staten Island. And do we see ethnic change? Do we see population change here that might affect the partisan balance?
Well, I think one of the greatest changes you've seen on Staten Island is that blue area. Probably could go a little bit further south. That east shore of Staten Island has been a great influx of Russian immigrants coming, especially from Brooklyn. They've pretty much populated that whole area, and he said it goes down even further. That mid-island there, the green and the blue is considered to be a swing district. It favors Republicans, but there are a lot of Democratic votes to be had, especially on the west end. The North Shore is a traditional Democratic stronghold. It's where most of the borough's African-American population lives. It's also people from African nations, who are there, business owners and others like that. South is your more traditional Republicans and Democrats, homeowners, families. Like we say, the typical Staten Island family is a police officer married to a nurse, married to a teacher, civil service, family, veterans, which explains why they overall tend to be more conservative, even if they are Democrats.
And it's the most Italian-American concentrated congressional district in America,
It
right?
is, considering San
Even
Francisco
now.
and other places around the country. Yes, it is still that, and very much Catholic, even though I don't think they let the social issues, which I know the Tea Party kind of speaks to when they get through with the economy, I don't think that those issues resonate as much. I think everybody wants everybody to leave them alone when they're at home. There's kind of a refugee mentality. People from Staten Island tend to come from other boroughs. They just want to come home. This is what they want. They want to leave the big city, and they want the front lawn, the parking space, and that's why they've come to Staten Island.
So here is a Michael McMahon video where he tries to play to exactly those populations, the old Staten Island populations, and some of that ethos that our guest was just describing. Check this out.
Uniform Firefighters Association, Don Ruland.
Hi, good afternoon.
Welcome to SI. Thank you.
Mike, I've thought about a lot of things to say, but if you notice, everybody calls Mike McMahon instead of Congressman. You know why? Because he's a friend. We're here today before this memorial, and I can't help but go back to the memories of Mike's council days when he went to every street dedication. He supported every effort and everything that could be done to protect the families of the firefighters and the other emergency workers of this city so they can continue to do their job knowing they had somebody to talk to and who would support legislation to protect them. Mike's done a phenomenal job. The population of Staten Island has grown dramatically. It is a very close-knit, family-oriented borough that needs more fire protection. Mike, as councilman in the North Shore, had taken money out of his budget to repair firehouses, make them safe, support our need for equipment, support our staffing. I'll get back to once again saying he's a friend, but when he went to Congress, he never forgot something that a lot of people do. He never forgot where he came from. Mike's being the co-sponsor of federal legislation that will protect firefighters like myself and the men I'm very proud to represent again.
All right, so that certainly has, that down-home appeal to a lot of folks on Staten Island. Both of these videos that we've seen so far, the Grimm video and the McMahon video, are they just online? Are they just web video, or are these campaign commercials running on television?
I think the first Grimm one was a web-only ad, even though it was very striking. People sort of remember that old-timey, the piano and the sound film. This video I had never seen before. What struck me about that video is that the speaker is Donnie Ruland from the Firefighters Union.
You know him.
Behind him is behind him is Captain Dunn, who's the other firefighter union. And it's interesting because McMahon lost the Working Families Party endorsement because of his vote against health care. So people said, well, how does a Democrat win in a borough when labor is against him? And I think what this is trying to tell you, in addition to saying that McMahon is one of us, he's a community guy and he remembers the community from when he was a local lawmaker, is that unions and labor is still with him. And he makes a big point of that, having labor at his events as well.
The Working Families Party, the party to the left of the Democrats that often endorses Democrats, tries to keep them ideologically pure. Are they running an independent Working Families Party candidate against him?
No.
No, they just are sitting out this
There were
election.
some intercessions, I think, on the part of local lawmakers, Albany folks, people who were plugged into the labor movement in the state, saying that would be a very bad idea to put another. There were people who probably would have been willing to do it.
Because then they would lose the seat. And I know there was a lot of discussion when McMahon first decided to cast his vote against health reform, discussion of mounting a primary challenge from the left.
Yes, one of the opponent that he beat in 2008 in the primary, Steve Harrison, is an attorney from Brooklyn, excuse me, contemplated being that person, and I think just cooler heads kind of prevailed and said, let's not start this, because there is always this, it's a funny thing in Staten Island politics, there's always this looming Vito Fossella is going to come back, and the first time he sees this opening, you're going to give these people an opportunity to come back into this race. So let's not do anything to encourage anybody to get crazy.
Here's another grim ad. This is an attack ad called Don't Be Fooled.
Don't be fooled by career politician Mike McMahon, who only fights for Washington insiders. He admits that Obamacare will drastically reduce care for our seniors, but he refuses to repeal it. He also knows Obamacare raises taxes and our premiums while increasing the deficit. Still, McMahon sides with Obama and Pelosi. But we shouldn't be surprised. McMahon votes with Pelosi and Obama 93% of the time.
I'm Michael Grimm, and I approve this message.
Now, if that message sticks, the Democrats might wonder, well, why put up a fake Republican against a real Republican? If people are going to tag him with voting with Pelosi anyway, if that's true that he did it 99% of the time, 90, whatever that said.
93, he'll
93, forgive me. But even if he voted against health care, if he voted with the Democrats a lot, and we went over before when he did and when he didn't, but if that's the message that sticks, then it's almost for the Democrats, what's the point of putting up somebody who tacks a little bit to the center?
Well, I think that what you're seeing in that ad as well is Grimm has taken on the call of repeal, and it almost seems that from the McMahon perspective, no vote against health care is a strong enough vote. I voted no once, I voted no twice, and now because I won't vote for repeal, now it's like, well, that vote gets obviated, and they gave me a pass on voting because they knew that if he did that in the district, that he wouldn't have a chance. He might maybe a loss automatically if he votes in favor of health care on that. And also, McMahon pointed out to us in our editorial board meeting, well, if you look at the record, I voted with John Boehner and the Republicans 60% of the time. And, you know, the 93% of the time, as we know, includes post office openings and Boy Scout honorees and stamps and things that a lot of Republicans might have voted for, too. But again, it's that Pelosi connection that they want to keep making.
If he voted with the Democrats 93% of the time, with the Republicans 60% of the time, then he voted 150% of the time. How can you do that?
Well, he's going to tell you, well, he'll also tell you that the National Journal, I believe it was last year, did an analysis of all the first-year votes in the entire House of Representatives, found him in the exact center of members, and that's the nonpartisan, publication. That's another thing that he trumpets, and also, trying to kick back on the anger that he sees out there.
Last thing, 30 seconds. Also from Staten Island, we have the DA, Dan Donovan, in the statewide race for New York State Attorney General against Democrat Eric Schneiderman. I don't know how that's going to turn out. I'm sure you don't know how that's going to turn out, but is it going to hurt Dan Donovan that Carl Palladino is at the top of the ticket?
I don't think Carl Palladino helps anybody at the top of the ticket for the Republicans this year, but I think that what may help Donovan more is he has a base on Staten Island, and that base is also similar to what happens in Queens, same types of voters, and maybe a little bit in the Bronx. He's one of the few Republican candidates who can bring something of a New York City base with him to the rest of the state.
Good point. That base really got Giuliani elected, really got Bloomberg elected, so we'll see if it also makes the difference.
It's 5 elections.
When the votes are counted for Dan Donovan and Eric Schneiderman. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you again.
Here are this week's web video picks. Number 1 is about the so-called epidemic of attention deficit disorder. This animated video about education reform around the world comes from England's Royal Society for Encouragement of the Arts, Manufactures and Commerce. It illustrates a speech by British creativity expert Sir Ken Robinson.
This is the modern epidemic, and it's as misplaced and it's as fictitious. This is the plague of ADHD. Now, this is a map of the incidence of ADHD in America, or prescriptions for ADHD. Don't mistake me here. I don't mean to say there is no such thing as attention deficit disorder. I'm not qualified to say if there is such a thing. I know that a great majority of psychologists and pediatricians think there is such a thing. But it's still a matter of debate. What I do know for a fact is it's not an epidemic. These kids are being medicated as routinely as we had our tonsils taken out. And on the same whimsical basis, and for the same reason, medical fashion. Our children are living in the most intensely stimulating period in the history of the earth. They're being besieged with information and calls for their attention from every platform, computers, from iPhones, from advertising holdings, from hundreds of television channels. And we're penalizing them now for getting distracted. From what? You know, boring stuff. At school, for the most part. It seems to me not a coincidence, totally, that the incidence of ADHD has risen in parallel with the growth of standardized testing. Now, these kids are being given Ritalin and Adderall and all manner of things, often quite dangerous drugs, to get them focused and calm them down. But according to this, attention deficit disorder increases as you travel east across the country. People start losing interest in Oklahoma. They can hardly think straight in Arkansas. And by the time they get to Washington, they've lost it completely. And there are separate reasons for that, I believe.
Challenging notions about changes in society and where they come from. Video pick number 2 is also an animation, this time from extranormal.com, whose mission is to bring movie making to the masses. As you will see, it's as easy as updating snarky dialogue between, say, a young woman and an experienced attorney about her desire to go to law school.
I really want to work on the important issues of the day.
Do you consider a breach of contract case between two giant software companies an important issue of the day?
Of course. The marketplace is very important.
They've spent $4.1 million in legal fees arguing about the name of an obscure font that no one ever uses.
I also want to work for legal aid. It must be so fascinating to help poor people with their legal problems.
What's fascinating is that you will be one of these poor people. Except you will have $100,000 in law school debt.
I'm not doing this for the money.
I hate you. I hope an asteroid hits your dilapidated house in a bad section of town.
You're just very jaded.
So how do you plan to pay for law school?
I'll have to take out a few loans.
You realize you'll be paying those back for the next 20 years, even if you decide you hate being a lawyer.
I know I'm going to love it.
I see. Have you ever had to answer 428 requests for admission, all of which were designed to trick you?
I can't wait to investigate my client's case. It's like being a detective.
Have you ever agreed to a mediation, and then discovered the other side only requested it so a process server could trap your client in the bathroom of a Wendy's?
I really love alternative dispute resolution.
Have you ever spent a Thanksgiving holiday reviewing 1.2 million pages of billing records in a warehouse in Topeka?
I am very committed.
I think you should be committed.
That imagined dialogue from D.W. Kazi has struck a nerve. It's been viewed more than 664,000 times so far on YouTube. So here's a cheaper way to influence the criminal justice system than taking out loans for law school. Buy a Barry Cam.
Hello, I'm Barry Cooper with Never Get Busted. You're watching this video through my new Barry Cam that will become available a month before Christmas. We've been working really hard on these units. They take an excellent quality video, and you'll be able to purchase these from me, and when the police pull you over, you press a button and it instantly starts recording the traffic stop. Then you're able to go home, upload that traffic stop to my website for my personal analysis of whether the police did anything wrong or not. So it's just like having me as your expert witness with you 24/7. So I'm going to turn the camera around right now so you can get another idea of how clear this wonderful little camera is. We're so excited to be releasing these. Look at that video. I'm going to do a U-turn. Look how clear that is. So there's the first demonstration and sneak peek into the Barry Cam, and I hope you join our team with us one day of citizens that are going to be out filming corrupt police officers.
That video posted by Never Get Busted and comes to us via boingboing.net. But the Barry Cam can't stop this. The first court order ever to be served by posting a video to someone's Facebook page, as far as we know. And it was appropriate given that the alleged offender had threatened, bullied, and harassed his victim on, you guessed it, Facebook. allegedly. So he logged on after that and saw this.
I'm going to explain the purpose of the intervention order and the conditions associated with it. But first of all, I must warn you that if you do not obey this order, you may be arrested and charged with a criminal offence. A contravention of this order carries a maximum penalty of $28,037 or 2 years imprisonment. Number 4, you're not to publish on the internet by email or other electronic communication any material about the protected person or to her on Facebook. That includes Facebook. Number 5, you're not to contact or communicate with the protected person by any means, including by text, email or phone, except through a police or lawyer. This order has been delivered by what you call substituted service. We have a court order that had been granted on the date of the interim order that we are to serve via Facebook. And I must warn you that you have now been officially served, that if you disobey this order, you can be arrested and charged as I described earlier on. It is a criminal offence to breach this order.
Victoria Police Forcebook put that one on the web from Victoria, Australia. And if social media can be used by your local law enforcement official, why not your local TV journalist? Video pic number 5 from KDFW TV in Dallas, Texas.
This is Clarice Tinsley with breaking news at City Hall of a hostage situation and a gunman on the loose. Fox 4's Matt Grubbs is on the scene tweeting details to his 87 followers. Matt. Thanks for that update, Matt. Now we take you live to Fox 4's Natalie Solis inside City Hall. Natalie.
Clarice, I'm in a conference room taking a picture of myself with one of the shooting victims. I'll post it to my Facebook page immediately. Back to you.
Thanks, Natalie. I'm now joined by Bart Schimmel, who is an expert in police tactics. Oh, just got Natalie's picture. Nice. Okay, Bart, what are Dallas police doing to get this situation under control?
Well, right now we've got a recon team on site. We're determining how many shooters we're dealing with, going sector to sector, make sure every room is secure, we clear each room. But actually, while I've got you here, I'd really like to encourage the viewers to check out my band Slap Daddy on our MySpace page. Big into Journey, Foreigner, REO, a lot of Foghat. Really think you're going to dig it.
Thanks, Bart. We'll definitely check that out. I've just been notified that Fox 4's Sophia Ressa has checked in through Foursquare at the Starbucks across from City Hall. Sophia.
Thanks, Clarice. I am here at Starbucks where not only can I see a lot of police activity, but I just got a coupon for a grande macchiato. Back to you.
Sophia, thank you. Right now, let's go back to Matt Grubbs for an update.
Well, Clarice, it is now 88 followers, and I have just been retweeted. Sweet.
That roast of social media was originally shown at the Lone Star Emmy Awards ceremony, and those are this week's web video picks. On to mass media, money, and politics. Earlier this year, the Supreme Court's Citizens United ruling deemed that corporations have First Amendment rights and removed restrictions on political contributions by big business and other groups. Now, in legal cases around the country, advocacy groups and corporations are asserting another legal right, the right to privacy. One example, in this election season, they would like the privacy to fund political ads without disclosure. This expansion of corporate privacy is happening just as our personal privacy rights as individual people are growing ever more precarious, as pointed out by Dahlia Lithwick, a senior editor at Slate who covers the Supreme Court and legal issues. She wrote about this paradox, and she's with me now to take a look at it. Hi, Dahlia. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
And I should say that Dahlia and I have been talking on the phone, doing radio interviews for about 11 years, and this is the first time we've met in person.
It's creepy.
Let's take one at a time. First, the corporate privacy. Corporations have privacy rights?
Well, it's an interesting problem, Brian. You know, only one justice thought so in Citizens United. In Citizens United, there were 5 justices who said corporations are people, money is speech, therefore striking down part of McCain-Feingold. But there was only one justice, Clarence Thomas, who said also they shouldn't have to disclose, and he was ready to strike down the disclosure rules. Now, no one else agreed with that. But now we're sort of living in a world where some of that is catching on, and you're seeing corporations say, in fact, you're seeing the Chamber of Commerce say, we don't want to disclose our donors for the same reason that Clarence Thomas cited to in his opinion, which is if you throw our names up on a website, we're going to be harassed, there's going to be retaliation. Remember what happened after Prop 8. And so this argument is being made, it's being made at the state court level with groups who are saying in state court we don't want to disclose. So it's kind of exploded into this, I don't want to disclose.
Prop 8 was the California referendum that banned gay marriage in the state. And what happened after that?
Well, it's unclear factually what happened, but certainly a lot of proponents of Prop 8 who wanted to do away with gay marriage said that once their names were disclosed, they were subject to all sorts of harassment. Now, this ranged from, someone tipping over their lawn sign to quite serious economic boycotts. You may remember there were boycotts of the Mormon Church. There were people who lost their jobs. So it's not an unserious proposition in a web era for people to look around and say, oh my God, Target gave money to this. We're going to boycott Target. So I don't want to belittle the consequences of having your name out there, but certainly the predicate for Citizens United was having your name out there is the only way the system works.
Right, and this used to be the conservative argument for unlimited campaign donations, or at least it used to be part of the package. They would say it should be about transparency. So any individual should be able to give as much as they want. Any corporation should be able to give as much as they want. And the voters will be able to see who's giving the money, and that's how the voters will know if the election is being tipped or the messaging is being tipped. Now, you could argue that most voters are not going to be sophisticated to do the research to see who's donating what anyway. But now we're in the Citizens United era, and all this campaign spending is going on, or campaign simultaneous to the actual campaigns. These independent groups are spending money. U.S. Chamber of Commerce is the example you gave. And suddenly, the people who donate to that are not known.
Right. I mean, this has turned into, just to your first point, this was an uncontroversial proposition. When McCain-Feingold passed, everyone agreed, right and left, that disclosure is the only thing that allows, we need sunlight and everyone needs to know what's going on. It's interesting because when they tried to pass in Congress the Disclose Act that would kind of correct for some of this legislatively, Republicans voted against it this time. So you're quite right. There's been this sea change in terms of what was once an uncontroversial proposition is now a roadblock. We don't want to disclose. And I think it goes to this sentiment that you're seeing, and you're really seeing it at the court, not just in Thomas's language in Citizens United, but in another case that I cite in the article, Doe v. Reed, which is a Washington state ballot initiative, where again, the people who signed the ballot initiative, this was an all but marriage proposition, didn't want their names disclosed for all the same reasons. In fact, they cited the Prop 8 retaliation. And there you have Justices Alito and Thomas completely agreeing that we don't want to put our names up on the internet. People are scary. And you have Justice Scalia, now this is Justice Scalia, who's usually in lockstep with Clarence Thomas, saying, good God, civic courage, people. People used to vote in open elections. You got to get out there and put your name out there. This is a really interesting schism between two of the most conservative jurists on the court.
A philosophical battle within conservative America, or at least conservative intellectual America. The privacy for corporations is not just around campaigns either. There's an AT&T case that you're familiar with, right?
This is a really fun case. The court granted cert. That means they agreed to hear the case in September. And this is a case that came up through the Third Circuit Court of Appeal. AT&T was subject to a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act, and they cited an exemption under FOIA for embarrassment, for disclosing information that would be personally embarrassing. And the Court of Appeal said, it's true. AT&T can be capable of embarrassment and humiliation and harassment. So the court is literally going to look at this follow-on case. They may not think of it as a follow-on case, but essentially say if corporations have a First Amendment right to speak, do they also have a right to say that they're embarrassed and hide information from people who want to submit FOIA requests. And of course, people who support FOIA say this will be the end of all the transparency laws that we've tried to pass.
So corporations can experience embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
Can they experience love under the law?
Well, you know, I feel like you and I had this conversation around Citizens United when we tried to persuade your listeners that they could vote on April Fool's Day. And my, you know, follow-on question to that is...
We did an April Fool's joke, you and I,
yes.
that the premise of which was that the new proposal was for corporations to get the right to vote.
Right. And we, I think, alarmed a lot of listeners. But I came away from that thinking, what about the Second Amendment? Do they have a right to bear arms? Can Target get itself a little Uzi? And so I don't know where this ends, but I do think it is sort of a piece with a Roberts court that is, I think, sort of empirically shown to be quite pro-business, and an America that doesn't quite know what to do with that.
And then would a marriage between a human being and a corporation violate the sanctity of marriage? That could be the next debate.
We could do that next April Fools. Yeah.
On the other hand, individuals' rights to privacy are being eroded under the law.
Well, so this was my hypothesis going into this piece, is if corporations are being guaranteed ever expanding rights to privacy, are people getting them too? And of course, interestingly, people have less and less privacy. And one of the great paradoxes of privacy, I think Justice Scalia has pointed this out, is the less privacy you have, the less privacy you expect. And so as that noose kind of tightens, Americans think, well, you know, maybe national security letters under the Patriot Act are okay. Maybe it's okay if the government goes through my library records. And so what I tried to do in the article is just to give a couple of examples from kind of trivial things like all body scanners at airports that are pretty much nudie pictures, to less trivial examples like an Oklahoma statute that was passed last year that would put up identifying information about women who seek and have abortions that make it fairly clear, you know, that not their names, but enough information that you could piece it together if you wanted to go on a website and check it out.
Now that's extremely scary. How would that work?
Well, it's that particular statute was struck down for other reasons, and this part of it, I think, is back in action now in Oklahoma. But the notion is we're not putting their names up there. We're just saying, do they work for the government or not? How old are they? It's all collected under the guise of, and we remember this from Kansas when Phil Klein was the Attorney General, who wanted to seek all this information because there's this idea that abortion providers are giving abortions to young girls, or unnecessary abortions, or dangerous abortions. So they say this is toward the health and safety of the mother. But what in fact does is it has the effect of outing and shaming, right? Think back to Citizens United, shaming and stigmatizing these women whose information is up there.
Even though at the same time we have HIPAA in the United States, the law that's intended to protect the privacy of everybody in a medical setting. So it may come to blows over that someday in Oklahoma. You also wrote about what you called a deeply weird Supreme Court ruling on an electronic privacy case.
Well, this is, I think, the nut of it, Brian, is that the Supreme Court is dealing with these new technologies. And I think it's not an understatement to say they are freaking out. And this was a case that had to do with the expectation of privacy that a police officer, someone on the California SWAT team, had in his pager. And what was fascinating to me was the court, and this was widely lampooned last spring, had no idea what a pager was. And questions were things like, pager, does that send a signal to a satellite somewhere? And you had this sense that on the one hand, they want to kind of dig in on these privacy issues. They want to try to understand how new technologies implicate privacy. And on another, they're just baffled. And that was an interesting ruling because the court essentially said, we just don't know enough about this stuff to issue a bright line rule. And I think that, you know, another example of it is the funeral protest case that the court just heard, where at least one justice, Justice Stephen Breyer, was just saying, let's talk about when they put information up that's private on the internet and this poor soldier who's dead and they use his name on a website. Let's talk about what that means. It changes everything. So I think the justices are quite anxious about how new technologies implicate privacy. I think they don't know where to begin.
I wonder if the culture influences the law in this respect, because with Facebook and everything else, people are putting all kinds of private information, what used to be considered private information, up to who they think are their friends, but it's up there for anybody to see. And there seems to be a generational shift with the younger generation not valuing personal privacy online as much as an older generation might have. And then I wonder if that generalizes to influence the law.
It's a great question, and when I posted this piece, I had an awful lot of folks post on my Facebook page who were teachers or professors or high school teachers who said, my students have no need to protect their privacy. They are alarmingly inclined to put everything out there, and they see nothing as an intrusion on their privacy. Now, I don't know if that exactly it may be an opposite to situations like a full body scanner where you have to do it, or to situations like this Oklahoma abortion rule. But I do think that the principle is there, that we have a generation whose expectations of privacy are quite different from ours.
So could the court be called on at some point to integrate their notions of individual privacy, which is loosening, and corporate privacy, which is tightening, and come up with a single standard?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I like to believe that the court is still going to, that Citizens United was an outlier, and that Justice Thomas's opinion about disclosure is an outlier, and that we still have a court, like we said at the top, that predicates the idea of campaign finance, at least, on the idea that we need to have information, and more information is good. So I like to think that sort of Scalia's civic bravery view is going to prevail. But I do think that the court needs to both catch up with the technology and how privacy has changed dramatically in just 10 years. And I think it also needs to pull back on some of the sentiment that corporations are people too.
By the way, Supreme Court hearings, one of our great public institutions, they're not private, are they? You can put cameras in the courtroom and show those on television, can't you?
Brian, not only can you not put cameras in the courtroom, but last June, as you may recall, the Supreme Court sealed its front doors for the first time. They have these elaborate front doors, and for security reasons, they said American citizens who seek to come in and stand in line for 4 hours have to go around the side. And a dissent, surprising dissent from Justice Breyer, who said, oh my God, the symbolism of this is just...
Privacy for me, but not for thee. Dahlia Lithwick, thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian.
Coming up next, how your snapshot of a red-winged blackbird helps scientists understand what in the world is going on.
The smallest moments can have the biggest impact on a child's life. Take time to be a dad today.
Hi, I'm Chancellor Matthew Goldstein, pleased to present CUNY's Student All-Star Team.
In the infield, Colin Powell Fellow Zoe Blackwood, National Science Foundation Fellow Andrea Marie Balbus, Thurgood Marshall Scholar Jasmine Kalazaer, and Kaplan Leadership Scholar Komia Titsu. In the outfield, National Science Foundation Fellow Igor Labutov, Barium Goldwater Scholar Hendia Raisa Edmond, and Fulbright Fellow Laura Vreens. Behind home plate, White House intern Crystal Ferguson. On the pitcher's mound, George J. Mitchell and Truman Scholar Ryan Marola. In the bullpen, Winston Scarlett, Mellon Mays Fellow, and Elias Alcantara, Organization of American States Scholar, and designated hitter Benjamin A. Gilman International Scholar Ayin Richardson.
CUNY All-Stars, like the Yankees, our hometown champions.
So you can't save money? That's easy as pie. Brown bagging lunch instead of going out. $6 save times 5 days a week times 10 years is $21,000. That's a lot of lettuce. Small changes today, big bucks tomorrow. Feedthepig.org.
Have you spotted a ladybug recently? Next time you do, snap a picture of it and send it off to the Lost Ladybug Project, a scientific effort that's documented where and when ladybugs appear in order to understand why some species of the insect are becoming so rare. It's one part of a larger ecology crowdsourcing endeavor called Project NOAA. that lets regular people, even in New York City, help scientists understand elements of the natural world, like invasive species and migration patterns. The creators of Project Noah are here to tell us more. They are Yasser Ansari and via Skype, Martin Sepperly. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Tell us more. Where did this idea come from?
So you did a great video segment about attention deficit disorder a little bit earlier. We're interested in tackling nature deficit disorder. And so we actually took a class where we met in graduate school at NYU's Interactive Telecommunications program. And there was a class called Social Activism Using Mobile Technology, taught by a guy named Nathan Fritas. So naturally, I was drawn to nature. We got together and thought with this exploding popularity of mobile devices like iPhones and Androids, it could be a great opportunity to use that tool, traditionally considered as a distraction from nature, as a way to get people refocused on nature. And then kind of simultaneously, it was this big boom in what's called citizen science, or opportunities for people to kind of get involved. And so we thought it would be a perfect time to see what we could do. We whipped something together, and it's been getting a lot of traction.
So let's take a look right away at our first image here. This, I think, is going to be a map of the world. Can we get this up? There we go. So tell us, Yasser, what we're looking at here.
So this is our main map view on our website, and this basically just shows you where we're getting submissions from. So all those big bubbles with numbers on them correspond to specific nature encounters from all over the world. So you can see the East Coast is kind of our home turf, where we get a lot of we have a lot of popularity. But if you look above Africa into southern Spain, one of our top users is from Spain. And recently we've been getting some great spottings from Australia, New Zealand, Tasmania as well.
And I think if we zoom in on this map, we can get right into New York. There you see an aerial view of New York City.
Right.
And I think even tighter, and we can get into Central Park. There's Central Park. What are we looking at here?
So these are just clusters of spottings around Central Park. My guess would be a lot of them are mushroom sightings. So we have a lot of users that are really interested in tracking fungi. And so there's a guy named Gary Linkoff, another one of our top contributors. He wrote a North American Field Guide to Wild Mushrooms, and he's pretty active in and around Central Park. So he submitted himself a couple hundred mushroom spottings.
And let's go in even one layer deeper. This is near the ball fields on the North Meadow.
Yeah.
Around 100th Street. And is this the actual citizen scientist submitted photo?
Yeah, I'd bet $1 million that's probably Gary Linkoff. But yeah, that's a specific spotting. So if you were to click on that image, you'd be able to find out some more details about it. You know, maybe the genus and species is actually indicated there on the bottom, but sometimes we don't get the genus and species. But by clicking on it, you can read all sorts of information.
So Martin Sepperly, so what? Who cares? Why do we want to know this?
We want people to be engaged with their environment. We're really trying to, everyone these days is carrying around a supercomputer in their pocket, and we really think that with this new technology we can create a new relationship between people and their environment and bring them closer to their environment.
Does this have policy overtones?
Yeah, I mean, if people are more connected with what's around them, I think definitely we can get more awareness. We can get situational awareness once we call them an army of citizen scientists. So hopefully once this army develops, if we want to find a specific issue, a specific species, specific question, we can pose this question to our army and get an answer.
Martin, can you see the screenshots that we're putting up from where you are?
Yeah.
All right, so you'll talk us through this next one.
Sure.
This is a part of your website where you group all the submitted photos, and people can click here to see what the animal is and where it came from. What are we looking at?
So this is the organisms page. Here is basically a data dump of what's coming in. So we have new spottings coming in every few minutes from around the world. So these are the photos. You see some people submit pets. We have a lot of insects. So this is just a visual guide of what's coming in, a lot like Flickr or other sites. So here we have an organism page. Oh, it's a squirrel. So squirrels are one of our most popular subjects since they're very common and easy to photograph. So on the right, you can see where it is. On the bottom, we have description, habitat, name, etc. So we really want to try to get a picture of what this is we're looking at, the context around it. Oftentimes users will share stories about their encounter in the description section. And then we have comments on the bottom, so we can have users comment, leave species ID suggestions for people who don't know what it is they're looking at.
So Yasser, Project Squirrel.
Right. So Project Squirrel is headed by a guy named Steve Sullivan out of the University of Chicago. And basically he's just tracking squirrel populations to see the key indicators in a lot of urban ecological environments. And so he launched Project Squirrel a while back, and we thought we could work with him to help kind of spread his message and collect data for him. And so, as Martin mentioned, squirrels have become one of our more popular submissions. They're found everywhere, a lot of urban, especially around here in New York and parks and whatnot.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Why is it that I see black squirrels in northern Manhattan, and it seems like I only see gray squirrels in Central Park and around there?
That's a great question, and I'm not exactly sure why, but that's the kind of question I'm sure Steve is trying to tackle with this data. Once we kind of find out, you know, the population density and types of squirrels seen in different areas, you can probably find a lot of information on where these clusters are.
Any idea about that one, Martin?
I don't know in particular. Right now I'm up near my home in Inwood, and it's all black squirrels up here. Well, not all, but it's about half and half, I'd say.
That's right. So tell us about some of the other particular projects, Martin. Other than Project Squirrel, what are the other particulars, for example?
We had, like you mentioned, the Lost Ladybug project. We had a Gulf oil spill mission, so anyone near the Gulf could photograph the impacts of that. We had just a fun Earth Day event where on Earth Day we tried to see how many spottings we could get from around the world. So yeah, just a lot of little stuff like that. And we're developing this more in the future, so we can have what we call local missions, which are specific to a certain locality. We can have regional, global missions. So we're really trying to expand this into multiple subsets.
Let's take a look at the iPhone app from Project NOAA. We will see here 2 screenshots. Right. First, you can tell us how this works. Yasser?
Sure. So the first mode is basically what's called the spotting mode. You can think of it kind of like your butterfly net. That's how you quickly capture your encounters with nature. It works really simply. At the top, you got some categories you can tap on, add some notes, including a name, attach a photo, and just click submit. On the back end, we're capturing location information, date and timestamps as well. On the right, you have what's called the location-based field guide. So based on your location, we'll show you all the wildlife that's been submitted around you. And where possible, when species have been identified, we'll provide a link to Wikipedia or the Encyclopedia of Life so you can actually learn about the wildlife that's around you when you're in physical proximity to it.
And I think we had another one up there. Did we have another one from your iPhone app? There we go.
Right, and that's just the map view of the field guide. On the previous image, we showed you a listing of them. This is just a map view of the same data. And on the right is, if you were to click on one of those data points, you could see the expanded information. That was actually a squirrel I submitted in Tompkins Square Park. He used to live in the East Village. And so that's the information associated with that particular spotting. And if you look on the top right, it says species info. So if you were to tap on that, you'd be able to see the Wikipedia entry to read more about it.
Polyporus squamosus. It sounds very exotic.
Yeah, it does.
It's actually...
It's a mushroom.
It's a mushroom.
Yeah.
It's not to eat.
I'm not really familiar with which ones are edible or not, but I just stay away from them in general. Try to stay alive.
Now, for citizen scientists who are really active, whether or not they ever passed high school biology,
we don't care.
They can earn badges. Let's take a look.
That's correct.
At the badges.
Right. So we are. Well, actually, this is a view of the next version of our application, right? And so as you can see, we've completely redesigned it. The inspiration behind this is more of like an old naturalist field guide, plus you get the old kind of textures in the back. And then we've made it much more community driven. So you can keep track of your spottings, you can accept missions, you can create places that are rich for exploring. And then on the bottom right, you see the My Patches. So this is going to be similar to Girl Scouts and Boy Scout patches. As you contribute and get involved, we'll reward you with these patches that are designed to look and feel like real patches.
Martin, can you tell anything about whether global warming is progressing through the citizen scientist measurements that are submitted?
That's the dream. I don't know if we're quite there yet, but ideally, yeah. If you could have a certain scientific method one year and then the same scientific method carried out the next year, yeah, you can definitely track that data. I don't know if we'd claim that we're there yet, but that's the dream.
Right. Yeah, and I would just add this becomes really exciting as you collect data over a long period of time. So particular organisms or insects based on temperature might become more prevalent in certain areas. And so as Martin said, we're just getting started, but over time, this data set becomes really powerful and very interesting.
And Martin, if people want to get involved, how can they?
They can log on to our site, it's networkedorganisms.com. They can check out the spottings. They can add comments. If they're an expert biologist, they can try to ID species. In the future, we're going to have more moderator roles, so we can try to have these experts kind of guide new users or younger users, really try to like hold their hand and try to educate them, basically.
Networkedorganisms.com. An amoeba never felt so modern, and the iPhone app is free. Thanks a lot. Good luck.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
And finally tonight, old media meets new media online and in the rounded halls of the Guggenheim Museum. The curators there selected 25 videos from over 23,000 submitted for YouTube Play.
YouTube and Guggenheim. They may not be two words that pop into your head at the exact same time, but they're really about a lot of the same things.
All eyes are shifting right now to the digital realm to see what that will bring us for the future.
YouTube Play. It's the first biennial
of creative video.
You don't need particular means or education or a background or budget. Everybody can play.
And that's it for this week. See us anytime at brianlehrer.tv. Next week, how the web was won, our post-election analysis. And tune into my daily radio show, 10 a.m. on WNYC Radio. Tomorrow morning, how moral revolutions are made. That's 10 a.m. on WNYC 93.9 FM and AM 820. Talk to you then.